Welcome to Science for Hire with your host, Dr. Charles Handler. Science for Hire provides 30 minutes of enlightenment on best practices and news from the front lines of the employment testing universe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Science for Hire. I am your host, Dr. Charles Handler, and I am here today with an awesome guest from outside the realm of the guests that we usually talk with on this show, but actually inside the realm as well, right? My guest is Mary Ellen Slayter, who is the founder and pulling all the strings behind Reputation Capital, and someone who's been a great help to me over my career, especially recently. So welcome, Mary Ellen. Let everybody know a little bit about yourself. Who knows you better than you? So introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I like to tell people that, I'm a former journalist. I don't know, maybe that's probably not how I would describe it. So I run a content marketing agency now, which means, and I specialize in HR, tech, insurance, and financial services, which were also the industries that I worked in when I was a more traditional journalist. So I think I've now been running this company, for 12 years. And I think that's actually longer than I was a journalist, which feels a little strange. But I wrote a career advice column for the Washington Post for many years, and I was a financial editor. I worked, around, I was at the Post, for example, during the 2008 market crash. I think other folks are often interested to learn that I was also in the Post for 9/11. And I'm not sure actually which experience was more traumatic, the financial crash or 9/11. But either way, those things shaped me and who I think when I look at the world and how I think about the stories that we tell. And now I just really enjoy going out and helping people figure out how to find and hone their best ideas and how to express them in the form of content, and content being the world's vaguest word, right? Because we talk about what is content, right? When I started this, my business, first of all, I was a print journalist, and I was a print journalist, right? Which was the very serious kind. And then I wound up making, multimedia. The business went from, we used to make white papers and blog posts, and now it's more.
I remember white papers.
Right? So many white papers. I met a guy once whose whole business was people just write white papers. What do you do? I just make white papers. And I'm like, what? So now it's white papers, podcast, video, and figuring out which channels are the best for your audience, for your message, so I think I look back on that wave of change, and then I look at this new wave of change that we're experiencing with AI, and I think things are about to get very interesting again in the content business.
Yeah, it's hard to get noticed. I mean, I say this a lot. Back when I first started, Rocket Hire, actually 9/11, I got laid off after 9/11 in my job at monster.com. And they taught me everything I needed to know working within an ad agency, how to create a brand and drive traffic to your brand, et cetera. But there wasn't a lot of other options when I started writing for Electronic Recruiting Exchange. That was the one place people went to look. So I got everybody's eyeballs pretty easily, and that helped launch my career. But nowadays, you couldn't repeat that very easily, I don't think, because there's just so much content. I mean, we both entered this call today feeling a little friggin' overwhelmed. I know I did. And it's because I'm trying to manage so many things, and then boom, bing, 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 boom, and I can't sometimes keep up. So when do I have time to consume content? How am I trying to get in front of people? That's why I work with you a lot, and how you've been very helpful. So we were talking a little bit about what do we really want to focus in on today. And we're talking about AI, obviously, that's inescapable. But I talk with pretty much everybody about AI, but not everybody, in fact, not anybody besides you that's been on this show so far has your real expertise and experience around thought leadership, content, helping individuals understand how to market themselves. Because you've got to do that. No matter how secure you are in your job, no matter how high you are on the top of the heap, you make a choice. If you're in the game, you got to promote yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your kind of foundational philosophies around this stuff.
So this actually goes back to something that, this is going to sound a little crazy, but that I wrote that wound up running in Forbes 3 years ago, which I guess it's 4 years ago now, given that it's 2024. And it was basically a defense of the liberal arts in the age of AI. Because at that point, we were already saying that the most important skills at work weren't actually the technical skills. I mean, we spend a lot of time thinking about our kids. We have kids, but what are they learning in school? It's like this, they're training for jobs of the future. And, I have an 8-year-old and a 17-year-old. And the way that I'm thinking about training them for the jobs of the future might surprise folks. It's because I'm emphasizing art and I'm
Yeah,
emphasizing
good.
creativity. And I have
Yeah.
one child that wants to be an engineer and another one that cries in the corner because she thinks that if she becomes an actor or majors in theater, that she'll have to live with her parents forever. Neither of those things are true. Neither of those
Yeah.
things are true. That was actually, she really did have a meltdown about this. And I asked her if she thought, she's a big Doctor Who fan. We watched it together. And I said, do you think David Tennant still lives with his parents?
Yeah.
So she's like, oh no, but he's Doctor Who. He's the doctor. So,
What about
but
the
I think
robot?
these, right.
Robot live with his parents? I don't remember
Prop.
its name.
But the skills, right? And this, again, I want to say, even for you as an IO psychologist, what are the list of things on those skills that we're trying to use AI to discern? Those soft skills, what are they?
Yeah.
Creativity. What's another one that they're looking for?
Yeah, I love my creativity, man. I love my creativity. Well, I would say like bigger picture thinking, like being able to string together multiple, synthesize information into one kind of idea by making sense. Like you got a lot of stuff flying around, see the patterns, figure it out, and become the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Like you're the person who makes the whole greater than the sum of all the parts that you're working with. Right? Does that make sense? AI can do that too, but I guess kind of, maybe.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, so it can make it easier to do it, but like, so the argument that I was making is that like, no matter what, as these tools continue to develop, like curiosity remains important, agility remains important.
Yeah,
like
of course.
learnability is one of my other favorites. It's like, and so what I did in the time of that article was I was connecting it to like, if you want learnability, go hire a foreign language major. If you want judgment and decision making, go talk to those political science and history guys. I mean, they've been studying game theory since long before that was a cool topic, at dinner. So that's, empathy.
Yeah.
We keep talking about empathy. So this is so if you, this is where things like kind of interesting in terms of as a thought leader, right? As a person who wants to take their ideas. And I define, a thought leader as somebody who is willing to think in public, right? And to come out there with new ideas and that they're willing to put out in the public sphere for debate and interaction. So that hasn't gone away, right? I think there's been this interesting thing with AI where we had this panic last year of like, oh my God, I can sit down and I can write 1,000 blog posts using this. Yes, and they all sound the same. Okay, now the tool's getting a little better. How can I use this tool to make it not all sound the same? And so one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how do we use these tools to make it easier to scale up the impact of our message, like in our ideas, without watering it down. Because AI is a race to the middle. Gen AI content is like, by definition, mediocre. And so for half of us, that's an improvement. Okay, let's not forget, for half of us, that is better than what we would have written. For the other half, like that's not going to be good enough. So I want to actually push this back on you because I'm a journalist and I'm always asking questions. What are some of the ways that you have experimented so far with using AI to produce your content?
I'll tell you right now, I was going to talk about it. So I'm writing a blog right now, which I've started doing vlogs. I did one a couple weeks ago and I really enjoyed it. I got a green screen and I got Ecamm Live and I've been able to put like wacky Dolly, generated stuff behind me, which is really cool. And I really like the wacky image generation for making my points, but there's no shame in admitting you're using these things, right? And so I know that I'm a great writer. I'm working on this vlog, right? It takes me a long time. I'm getting faster. I have a whole outline of stuff that I'm working with, quotes, all kind of stuff. I haven't done it yet. Literally this morning, the ChatGPT store opened, right? So I went on there and I'm just playing around what's there. There is there's an app or whatever in there that you give it some of your writing and someone has engineered it to describe your writing in a way that you can put the prompt into ChatGPT and then ChatGPT can take your content. It'll either generate content from nothing, which I would never do, or it can, massage your content into your voice. Now, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to read actually here how it described my writing, because I thought this was great. Write with the following style and tone. Combine a reflective, speculative style with a direct, analytical approach. Use a first-person narrative to create a sense of personal engagement. Integrating conversational and formal tones. Incorporate rhetorical questions and hypothetical scenarios alongside factual statements and analysis. Balance enthusiasm and skepticism, presenting ideas with a mix of hopefulness, caution, and critical examination. Blend shorter, impactful sentences with longer explanatory ones for rhythmic variation. Use metaphors and analogies to make abstract concepts tangible, while also employing precise language to discuss specific details and implications. The voice should be that of an informed enthusiast who is deeply immersed in the subject, yet critically aware of its complexities and potential pitfalls. Ensure accessibility to the general audience, maintaining a balance between technical details and broader implications. I mean, that's a lot of friggin' detail, and that summarizes my writing style. So
it does actually.
I haven't done it yet. I haven't tried it yet. So that's one of the things. I would say it writes podcast show notes for me, but I always go back and massage it. Like, so to your point, it gets you to a place, but if you're just going to accept that place and regurgitate it right back out, you're doing yourself a disfavor. Mm-hmm. If you take that place it gets you to and say, okay, a lot of the heavy lifting has been started here. How can I come in and put my own personal touch on this, nip and tuck, cut and paste, that kind of thing. So that's generally how I'm doing it. I mean, I'm experimenting with using it for more technical stuff, not in my writing and things, but that's where I'm at. I mean, I've also gone in and said, you're a content marketing strategist, help me do this or that. And usually it comes up with stuff that I already know. And so it's more about the execution of those things to me, right? So that's it. So you're working with a lot of content creators and helping a lot of companies. How are you using it? What's the secret for you?
Okay, so there's a couple ways what I consider like the entry path here. The first thing I have people do is use it for adapted content. So you kind of jumped ahead to what I'd almost consider my stage 2, right? With that kind of work. I think you've done this too. So let's say you mentioned podcast show notes. That's actually a good example of this. So I've made content in one format that is original. So for example, this conversation that you and I are having, when it's over, we'll use, the AI, like go and we'll edit it. AI can help generate the first draft of the show notes. When those are done, we can also ask AI to write the social post, and we can get specific about, hey, it's going to run on Instagram, tell it the channel. This is where you can use the safest thing you can do. It's like, it's based on your voice to begin with. Go and use a tool like Lately is built for purpose for that. If you need to do it at scale, and it will take in your voice, right? Like that way it stays in your voice. It's easy. I think that's very safe. And you can take, when you make a big thing, you can turn it into all those little things really easily, like really fast. And then you just review it and then you hit publish, right? But you never just you don't let it auto publish. No, you've always got to take a look at it. The second thing that I usually sort of walk people through is using it in a little more of a co-creation model. Instead of taking something that already exists and creating all the little spin-off pieces, I say, okay, well, you're stuck and you're trying to write, you said you got to write a blog post, but you're not sure like quite how to get started with it. So we would use it, give it, a good prompt and have it write the outline for you. Mm-hmm. So I treat an AI rough draft as like essentially a form of an outline and as a form of research, because the most important thing that tells me, like if I'm just asking the AI just to write it, like I'm not even giving it source material. So that's just, write me a blog post about, AI and assessments. And it's going to give me something that is going to represent the average of everything that is already on the internet about AI and assessments. And that's fine. It's not going to have a voice to it. It's not going to have an opinion. It's not going to have.
Right.
So, but I actually use that as a base to then let me know where is my floor, because I consider mediocre my floor. Yeah. So if that is the default and that is what I know what everybody else is going to write and publish, like what can I do that's different? What can I do that breaks free, that do what my friend Viola calls weird content? Like, how can we make more weird content that is hard to reproduce, right? Yeah. That is hard that you're now using it, but use it to write that draft and then do something else, right? Like it's the base, but now go argue with it, like go kind of jazz it up. And then the sort of third final kind of level where things get really interesting for me is that I do a lot of interviews with subject matter experts that maybe the interview happens once and the purpose of it was to write one blog post about one topic. But once I've developed a relationship, so like for you, I've interviewed you and Claire, my team, like how many dozens of hours, we have hours upon hours of conversations with you. AI lets me take all of those conversations and analyze them and identify the key themes and give me ideas for things that I might not have noticed.
Okay, so tell me how specific. Yeah, and so you read my mind. I was going to say one of the things that we hadn't talked about is when you said, "Oh, it takes everything that's already on the internet and summarizes it or what it's been trained on." Well, we can feed it stuff. We can give it new information and then use its relational capabilities to ingest that and, like you said, find information. So one of the things I'm working on doing is I'm doing a series of interviews for multiple purposes of output, including kind of a research report. And I'm AI transcribing all those interviews with a pretty set structure, right? So my goal is, and I haven't even started looking at how I'm going to do this, to feed it 20 interview scripts and say, what are the themes that are coming out of this? I don't expect that I can just stuff it in there and get the answer that I want right away. I think it's going to take a lot of prompt engineering and work to get that, but I'm going to start with the easiest thing. I'm just going to stuff all these transcripts in here and I'm going to ask it to tell me what the themes are. I'm curious beyond all belief what'll happen, but how specifically, don't give away any, trade secrets or anything, but how do you give it a bunch of different disparate pieces of information and ask it to come up with themes? Is it as easy as stuffing it in there?
Yeah, kind of. And in fact,
Yeah,
so
okay.
one of the other interesting things that I did some work this year. We work with Ken and Carta, who's a digital transformation agency, and they've got some of the most interesting experts, in AI and at the forefront of using this in I think some really interesting ways that will shape how we think about employee experience and customer experience. But one of the things that I learned in my work with them this year was they were talking about how think about if you've worked with data, like you and I have both been doing things with data now for decades, right? And we
Yeah,
spent a lot of, how many hours of our life have we spent, and you just described this, trying to get data into a form that the computer can do something with.
yeah, lots.
And one of the things that kind of has blown my mind and kind of stuck with me is when one of the Ken and Carta guys said, actually, AI prefers that you not do that. Like it wants unstructured data.
Well, it's
and in fact, could you
supervised
please
versus
not do
unsupervised
that?
instruction. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's like, could you
yeah.
please so that first step of that, right, of just like, give me business data in its raw form and let me take the first pass of making sense of that. And as I've been applying that into my work and thinking about that and resisting, I'm having to untrain myself. Like I'm having to undo the mindset that, oh, let me go clean this up. And it's like, oh no, the computer cleans it up.
Well, that's
the
what I'm
AI.
doing right now with this
I
blog
know
post.
it's really cool, but I use Writer. So Writer is my preferred tool, and it does allow you to say, use this source, and you can plug them in. And it is a walled garden. The other reason I like it is because it's not. People don't think about with ChatGPT and these other models. You're just putting your stuff in this model and training somebody else's model. And
Yeah,
I work in highly sensitive industries, and I'm not just going to put their stuff like
yeah,
in
yeah, of course.
ChatGPT. So I use Writer. I'm a huge fan of Writer. It's SOC 2 compliant. It's HIPAA compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really powerful and very flexible. And
Is it
they are very.
vaccinated?
So yeah, no, it's a good one. It's a good
Yeah,
one. So that's
very
where
cool.
I do it. That's where I use
Mm-hmm.
it. So the other thing I wanted to kind of even pick up on other uses of it, when we write in my messaging, right? So another similar kind of use of it is like we in the past we would sit down and like we would try to write like product copy or page copy and we'd say, okay, well, what do we want? What do we want to say about this? And as opposed to we talk about when we get in the customer's language, and we would go to all this time reading reviews and, manually going through this. And you can now use AI to do that. So go take your bad customer reviews, or go look at good ones or bad ones. The bad ones are always better. And use that as the input and say, write me a blog post, or whatever to convince this person that we're the best or something. Like take your competitors' bad reviews.
Right.
Now you can start to see at scale what people actually care about in their words. That's an interesting, so use it to like get information from these things would have all taken, like I used to spend a week reading these reviews, a week, like a whole work week. I would sit and literally read bad reviews of software tools. And there's a lot of bad reviews of HR tech tools.
Of everything, really.
People get very passionate about this. So, but imagine now I can sit down and do in about an hour what used to take me 40 hours.
Yeah, it's there. Those things exist. That kind of stuff is happening, right? And it's only going to get easier as the work you have to do to prompt engineer. That's what I'm blogging about. But this episode may probably air after I write the vlog comes out. But it's, my title is Prompt Engineering is Dead. Long live prompt engineering, because it's just all about how these things are going to prompt engineer themselves, and that's actually one thing. Let me ask you this. This is something I'm curious about. One of the things I think I really enjoy and I'm good at is coming up with catchy titles, right? I love coming up with catchy titles. Every time I go to ChatGPT and say, here's what I'm doing, come up with a catchy title for me, they're always pretty lame, just to be honest. Even when I say snazzier, more pizzazz, more intriguing, they don't ever kind of resonate, but I get 10 or 12 of them, and I start finding within that substance things I can use to make my own. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the pattern that we're talking about here, right? It's just using this thing to help get you where you're going. So let's think about it. And I think any professional person, right? So your goal is to get noticed more for whatever reason, but you want to get hired by people, you just enjoy sharing information. What am I doing in this day and age to differentiate myself? I mean, you talked about putting your own stamp on things, but it's not even just the content that you create, but like where you're putting it and how. I think one of the best things I've read in a while is I'm, working hard to continually increase my game is you had a really great little blog or summary about how to use LinkedIn effectively for content marketing, right? And LinkedIn's the only social I really use for anything professional. It was a really, really good piece. I sent it to some other people. I still look it over and make sure I'm meeting those things. So what are your top ideas for how to effectively leverage LinkedIn in a way that can get you where you're going, and utilizing AI within that? Fine.
Yeah, we can talk about AI, because AI is now in the air we're breathing now. So I can chat about that.
Much. Air actually is 3 letters, AI and R. So you're very correct.
Very close. Okay.
Air is yes.
Okay, so we talk about LinkedIn as a channel specifically. I mean, it is the most important channel, I think, for professional marketing. And I think it's still underused. I think those of us who are really active on it, like, think everybody else is, but it's actually still something that a very tiny fraction of people have very, very promote a lot.
Of course. Yeah.
So if you want to focus on the human interaction piece of it, right? So I would say I don't always post every day on LinkedIn. I almost always comment on somebody else's stuff. And I comment on it in a meaningful way. One of my things is, like, I do not want to contribute to what Lee Price, who I worked with for many years, she used to call it sludge. And she said this before AI. And I wonder, she must really not love it now, because sludge is this undifferentiated mess of content that is out in the world. And I would say I would rather go silent than make more sludge. Like, no sludge.
Yes, no sludge.
And AI, just if you use it wrong, allows people to make more sludge faster.
It's a sludge
which
cannon.
Nobody wants. Cannon. Nobody asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sludge cannon.
Exactly.
So I would say the secret is, one, know what your idea is. So one, spend a little time reflecting, exploring, think about what is the thing you want to be known for. Another thing you can even do is ask your friends, like, some people kind of have little mini focus groups. You can also go, if you want to use AI to do it, go analyze your emails to see what you care the most about, right? But find a thing, right? Go find a thing. What's your thing, right? I mean, I would say, I know for you, like, you've been writing about fairness in assessments, and that's a broad thing that you've been writing about for decades, right? How do you do this in a way that is defensible, fair, and, what's that other word you always like to use?
Ethical, bias-free. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's supposed to, is this actually work? Like, and is it, but you've been writing about that a long time. And I would just say AI came this new thing in there, but, like, that's a thread I would draw for you. Like, going back in the beginning of your career before I even met you. I associated those things with you, which tells me that your thought leadership worked. So
Good.
then pick that
Thank
thing,
you.
then pick your channels, right? Or pick your channel. If it's just you, pick one channel. And that might be, so now we're on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn can mean a lot of things right now. It could mean I'm going to post every day with text. It means I can make a video. I can do, LinkedIn has a podcast functionality in it now.
Oh, wow.
Like
I'm going
you
to
can
live
go
stream.
live.
I'm going to live stream. It's almost done. I cannot wait. I'm going to have you on as a guest. You're going to be an awesome guest.
Yeah.
And I'm putting all the tech together. And I taught myself, well, Joel helped me a little to use Ecamm, and it's going to be awesome. Anyway, so yes,
so there's all of these things. So pick the one that fits you the best. So I usually try to, like, some people are really, it's easy for them to write. You know, if I know that if I asked you to sit down and write me 500 words about something, you could, no problem. I have other folks that I work with who are brilliant, but the idea of writing is that's like, oh my God, that sounds like that's going to take me all day. And I'm like, well, why don't we just record a quick video?
Exactly.
And then they get going. So find the thing that you love and that you are looking forward to doing that takes advantage of your strengths. And then develop a schedule that is reasonable for you. It is better for you to consistency.
Yes.
Is the secret, right? I don't need you to post 10 times a day. I don't need you to make a bunch of custom videos. You know, you don't have to do all the things. Like, start small. I've got an idea. Here's my one channel. Here's my one format. And here's my frequency. Yeah. And that frequency could be a couple times a week.
I've been doing it. And I've been doing it one post a day pretty much. The hardest thing to do, by the way, in being a human is to be consistent. I've said that for a long time. And especially me, people that are, you know, running fast and wired hot all the time, it's hard to do that. So I built myself an editorial calendar in Trello. I follow it. I'm disciplined. It's great. I've tried different types of posts. I post, you know, I want engagement. I posted a couple polls. Hey, what do you think? Those get nothing. I get nothing out of those. LinkedIn loves it. If you get a certificate, you change your job or whatever, those kind of things, through the roof.
Well, hold on. Why do you think that is? Hold on. Why do you think that is? Why do you think?
Because that's what LinkedIn's job is to help people get jobs, right? So the more that you're celebrating that, it's going to push that up top. That's what I think.
I think it's actually even more deeply human than that. People want to know what's happening to other people. Many years ago, when I was at like a South by Southwest, and this was the early days of social media. Like, I'm talking like right a couple of years after we got Twitter, you know, and I walked with the speaker and he said, there's really one reason, the number one reason why people go to social media is to see what other people are saying about them. Number one. Number two, to see what other people are saying about people they hate.
Not to see what not to see what the design in somebody's latte looked like yesterday, or what their
only if you hate them.
I don't know, but that's the food posting. Right? The food posting drives me crazy.
Yeah, but that's a whole. But so there's also, like, do you hate follow anybody?
No, I
don't have to tell me who they are.
No, I don't hate. I'm not a hater.
Because there's like this dopamine. People get like, the dopamine surge you get from, like, because you're like, well, wait, why are you in this feed? Like, because there's people I follow, there's certain people who are very polarizing. If you want to see like some people who are really great on social, like LinkedIn, like Madeline Butler is a really good example of someone but she's also very polarizing. And it's funny because there's also people on there all the time, like going in there and like, you're wrong and you're saying this or whatever. And it's like, wow, girl, you have haters. Right? So that actually does motivate him.
Controversy gets engagement. Look at Donald Trump. For whatever, let's keep our political leanings neutral here, and that's a person who puts himself out there all the time saying all kind of stuff because people talk about it, you know? So
okay. I'm going to say, even there's a version of that is still professional, I would say, which is like partly my definition of thought leadership is it has some other smart person in your industry has to be able to argue with you about it.
Yeah.
Right. Someone that you respect. You have to put forth an idea that you're willing. I also believe in, strong ideas loosely held.
Yeah. Take. So it's called a take, right? It's called a take.
Yeah. Have a take, be ready to defend it.
Yeah.
And it's also be ready to change your mind. I mean, I'd say the willingness and ability to change your mind has become one of my favorite traits in other people that I admire. Come in, if you can't argue it, if nobody could argue it back, that is not thought leadership. And I'll give you some examples of things that are not thought leadership in our business. When someone comes to me and says, I want to be an expert on the future of work. Okay, well, first of all, that was like, or, I want to talk about the war on talent. And I'm like, okay, so that was McKinsey's thought leadership 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to use any cliches. Make your own cliches.
Well,
that's what I try
but they
to do.
made it. But like they made it. So the thing is, like, that was interesting then, but it's like the way we keep going with that. Then we got into the whole everybody wanting to talk about the Great Resignation. Guess what? The Great Resignation isn't thought leadership anymore. It's only thought leadership for that one guy that said it. Like, this isn't like how this works anymore. You have to find something, even if it's just a little. People are scared to rock the boat. And I'm not saying come out swinging. I'm not saying act like Donald Trump. But like, there are things that, so AI, here's another one example of like, I just say these things are just so bloodless. Like, I don't want to hear it. Human in the loop. Okay. Every single HR tech and marketing, everybody with AI, they're all saying, well, it's not really about the AI versus human. It's about the human in the loop. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but like, God, it'd be so much more interesting if somebody came out and said, actually, AI is going to take all of your jobs.
Yeah, well,
and here's why.
That's
like,
clickbait, right?
Something.
You got to put clickbait out there. Yeah,
but like it's debate club, okay? Mm-hmm. Like, think about what I mean. You don't want to say things that aren't true, but like, God, say something, right? Say something other. That, like, I'm always listening as a journalist who's been in this space kind of for a long time. I'm always listening for something, I say, oh, well, that's interesting. I'm listening for interesting. And the Great Resignation was interesting when it was noted. When Anthony Klotz said that, and just remember, Anthony Klotz said that as an aside in an interview with Bloomberg. Mm-hmm. And that phrase became this catchphrase. But he'd been studying that, like, that phenomenon and watching that, like, employment patterns for decades, like for years. So the more you say, the more you're likely to say something like Great Resignation. Like, that's product that since it does, like, quality is good, it helps you get better and you have more chances. But just make sure you're actually saying something. Like, what's something that we would disagree about?
You and I?
I'm trying to think.
Well,
king cakes are the best.
Yeah, it is Mardi Gras season. So one of the things I'm constantly trying to do, and you might tell me it's the wrong thing to do, but I feel like I'm a very niche guy, right? I'm talent assessment, but a lot of what I think and talk about, I think it's got a lot broader, but I've had a lot of trouble getting to that broader audience, maybe not non-IO psychologists, etc. I was thinking to myself, whoa, what if I changed the name of this podcast from Science for Hire to Science for HR? So I was immediately opened up a more broad thing, but does that really matter? Are people not listening to my podcast because it's hiring and they're not into hiring? I don't know. I'm trying to elevate my message beyond just hiring necessarily and more about being a human in the workplace. But it's, a label is just a label, right? I mean, I might have to change my whole.
Oh, labels matter. Labels matter a lot because they shape concepts. They shape
change
concepts.
The name to Science for HR instead of Science for Hire?
I think you should go further. I think you're not going far enough.
Okay.
I think that you should call it something else. Like let's just zoom out further, right? Just swapping out one word. What did we really do? I don't think there's any HR people that were not listening because they thought, oh, this is just for hiring people.
Right.
It's more like, what do you actually, then we have to do a little co-creation, a little workshop here, but like, what is the real value?
Yeah.
Watch me.
Yeah, okay.
No, what did they always, I was like, you and I probably, if anybody could do it, you and I could do it, right? We could rebrand the whole podcast in 5 minutes. But what is the real idea? Like, I often also tell people when you're in business and you're thinking about thought leadership and you're thinking about the ideas that you're exploring, what is the thing that people have to believe? Like, what is the idea that they have to believe in order for what you're selling, right? For your solution to even make sense. And even in your case, what is the thing that actually drives everything that you've made? Like with this podcast, like what is this angle? I don't think it's science. You're actually not talking about science at all anymore. I think you used to. I think that used to be part of it. I would drop that word. I'd zoom all the way out.
I would feel very naked without that word.
I know, right? But it's not really about science. That makes me think you're going to come here and make me do my homework, right? And make me go through. That's not what you're doing. Like you're exploring like the edges of this world of like these overlapping pieces of like technology and human beings and work and regulation. It's like I would look at something that better reflected
Mm-hmm.
the topics. This would actually be a good thing for AI to do.
I
Like
just
have
was
it
thinking
take
the
the
same thing.
transcripts,
I know.
take the transcripts of your 5 favorite episodes
Mm-hmm.
and use that as the source and say, give me 10 or 20, give me 20 titles of a podcast
Mm-hmm.
based on the content of this. What would you call this?
Interesting. I might give that a try. I very well might. I think the other question I have for you in this short moment, and you may not have a direct answer for me. This is one thing I noticed today. So I started posting links to this. Yeah, I started posting on YouTube. I created a YouTube channel. You guys help me out. I post each podcast. I post a short. I've been doing that for about 8 weeks now. I never really look at my stats, but I was in there posting today and I'm like, oh, 4 views, 6 views, 8 views. I'm like, well, it makes me a little depressed. I'm putting out good content. I get pretty good engagement probably on the audio side, but I got some pretty good, my best episode had 100 views. What should I expect? I mean, why am I putting it on YouTube if 3 people are watching it? You can see my dog in the background and my other really cute dog, my little tiny cute dog over there. Like you couldn't see that if you were just listening to the to the audio file. I don't know.
Okay, so I can give you an answer about this because YouTube, I'm kind of obsessed with YouTube right now.
Uh-huh.
I mean, my younger child also at one point, she changed her nickname and told me that like her name was now Jules. And I was like, what? And she goes, yeah, just Jules. It's my YouTuber name.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh, because kids that age, apparently they think that's a real job. But I think there's the people that she follows. And I look at that and I even think about, there's actually a lot of opportunity for B2B content around YouTube. YouTube is the world's 2nd largest search engine after Google, like in terms of, but what people often misunderstand about YouTube is that the best content on YouTube, like think about what you look for when you go there and like what engages you. How to content performs really well on YouTube. Like there's also things where you can again use the data, like you can use a tool like TubeBuddy and find out what keywords people are searching for that there isn't already great content. But it also has to be long. Like, so this is one of the biggest myths in my line of work that I encounter and that I have to overcome resistance is people assume that shorter is better. They go, oh, people have no attention spans anymore. And now that you have to make it short, it can't be long. And it's like, no, on YouTube, the videos have to be long. Like 30 short videos don't mean anything. Like 5 to 7 is the floor, right? The things that do the best are like an hour long, and nobody really ever wants to believe that, but that is how people watch YouTube.
Really?
Now, what you have to be interesting. The problem isn't that you're long; it's that you're boring.
Well, yeah, I'm not boring or long, really.
Not you. No, not you. But I'm just saying, like that's and here's the thing: short won't make up for boring. Right? Like I'm not going to watch that either.
No.
So focus on being interesting. Focus on like saying something interesting. Focus on doing something interesting.
But how do people know that I'm doing and saying things interesting if they're not tuning in? Are you saying because it's a search engine, huh?
So there's 2 ways that people find things on YouTube. One is they go and they're searching for terms and they find what you've done, right? And that is a way that people can find it. That's actually a really important thing for B2B stuff.
Right.
Because they're typing and that search result will actually come up at the top of the search results above the text searches. So that's pro tip. That's so greenfield if anybody's trying to capture, if it's good for employer brand, it's good there's just all kinds of opportunities there. But the other way, and actually the main way people find things on YouTube is through the suggestion engine. And this is what we talk about, people getting radicalized, coming back to politics for a second, how people get radicalized. There's a radicalization pipeline that researchers have actually identified where it's like you watch certain types of videos and then the algorithm suggests that you watch other things. People just let the videos play.
Oh yeah, my kid does it all the time.
You get suggested.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how people are watching these videos. So you have to think about what videos are you going to get suggested after, right? Like the way you think about how people like Jordan Peterson, like in those videos wind up, or Tim Ferriss, they have such big audiences. And then there's topics that people have that are similar and they get suggested. You have that Joe Rogan, And then they start going down this pipeline, of like, this is what you get. Or if you watch crafting videos, I mean, my whole feed is all because of Jules is like Mariah Elizabeth. It's like, okay, you like Mariah Elizabeth, so this is what we're suggesting to you next.
Yeah,
so
yeah, totally.
It's that predictive interest engine. So I would say if you want to build the audience, think about who else your audience is watching.
Yeah.
And how can you bridge from that?
Yeah, I think about it more as just an extension of the podcast, though. For me, it's just like I do the podcast, I'm doing it in video, and maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. The other thing is when I start doing this live stream, that thing's going to rock. It's going to, I think, get a lot more excitement going. I don't know if that's true, right? Because it's going to be pretty.
No, it is true. Live is better. I think that on demand, I think that the experience in the pandemic, when everything, all these on-demand webinars and all this, it was just really boring and people got burned out on them. As someone who loves live theater, like I want your live podcast for the same reason. I mean, I go pay to go watch, you go to the Sanger, to go watch the show. It's like, I mean, it's going to be fabulous. You know how much the level of skill that it takes to do that over and over and over again at that excellent level?
Yeah. I know.
It's really, I don't know, have you seen Wicked? Like, I guess, did you just see it before we passed? Okay. Well, I think if you like think about musicals, right? And you think about all the things that could go wrong. And if you think about this stuff, like there's an element of anxiety. Think about, again, you are the psychologist here. You have to create anxiety. You have to create, like, inspire emotion.
Yeah.
You have to like get people to feel a way about it. And like live automatically has more feeling because we might, back to what do? We go in to see not only what people are saying about us, but like what people we hate are doing.
Yeah.
Like you might, what if they fall down? What if they say the F word in the middle of the thing? Like, I mean, there's always that something crazy might happen.
I mean, I unfortunately tend to catastrophize sometimes, and I project that onto a situation and go, what if the ceiling just fell in or something like that? Well, I think I'm going to record them. I'm going to record them and live stream to LinkedIn and YouTube. I think it's pretty fun. I'm really enjoying the content creation stuff, and there are so many different tools. It's become a lot easier for somebody to do it themselves, but damn, it's hard to get noticed, and I think one of the things that, again, just going back to the YouTube, I remember, so there was one week, because I have an ed calendar that I create for myself in Trello, and I have different types of content, and I move through them, on a regular basis. And so when I really first came out of doing this, I had a week where none of my stuff got any views. And I'm like, what the? That's when you actually sent me that guide. And I had been doing things like posting more than one time a day. I mean, there's a lot of things I was violating, right, on that thing. And I stopped doing that. And I kind of started following what you're doing. And I've gotten, really good engagement, at least views and reactions. Comments are the hardest to get, and I often look at other people who are really well known and, at least in our little circles that I'm seeing a lot of traffic, and look at how many comments do they have? How many, reactions do they have? And I'm comparing myself to that, being like, okay, well, here's what my goals are. I might be heading in the complete wrong direction with that. So as we play out here, and this may differ for each person, but what should we be looking for? I'm investing all this energy into LinkedIn. I enjoy it. I'm putting a lot of content out there. I enjoy it. What kind of results are realistic? Like, I'm not, just being honest, I'm not getting 15 phone calls a day of people wanting to hire me for stuff, even though I would be awesome at it. So hire me. But I mean, what am I looking for? Is it self-satisfaction? Is it?
I think that writing and content creation is in fact inherently valuable. I think that it is how we hone our thoughts. It forces us, it gives us discipline. It forces us to think things all the way through. So in that sense, it already has value. I would say distribution is an promotion. Actually, are about 80% of the game, though, when it comes to really having business impact. And everybody kind of like forgets about that part. And that part costs money, right? So this is where I think that focus in your time on the highest ROI activities, right? So right now, I'll just tell you, you're doing more things like than I would ever advise any solo person to do. Like you've got a podcast and a YouTube show. So you've spread yourself really, really thin. So imagine if you pulled in and you just picked one of those and you put all of your time and your energy into that, and then also amplified it with some paid spend and got really excellent. Because right now you are a generalist competing with specialists in every one of those channels, right? You are competing with people who, for audience, for eyeballs. imagine what you would do if all you had to do with your life was if the only channel was that YouTube channel. What would you do differently? And you'd have attention, you'd be able to give attention to it and like really go in there. So I think it's easier when you're solo. Now, once we get in big companies, we've also both worked in little solo, kind of budgets and big company budgets. We can afford to be in more places with a message because we have big budgets.
Yes.
And we also have a lot of like, I place 20 bets and I expect half of them to fail and I still win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's not the game. Like you and I don't get to play that game. Right.
Yeah.
Instead, we have to manage our energy and say, I'm going to show up here and I'm going to show up here. I'm going to be amazing at this and I'm going to stand out and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be compelling. I'm going to be provocative and I'm going to do it consistently.
Yeah, that makes sense. I ask myself that question all the time, not just on the other stuff. We don't need to go into my psyche or whatever. It is, but I mean, honestly, and it's not that time consuming to cut an episode of this and get it all up there and share it out.
You say, but this is the danger though. You start saying it's not that big of a deal, not for you or whatever. But like, if you find yourself spending a lot of time, about once a quarter, sit down and review everything and see what's working and get rid of those no ROI activities.
Yes.
Because if I were to have sort of one call to action right now to content marketers and to marketing teams in general, it would be before you start talking about using AI to automate and accelerate, like do all this stuff, first go through and eliminate. Get rid of those no ROI things that seem like no big deal, but they also don't do anything for you. Stop doing them. Don't automate the thing that you shouldn't be doing anyway.
You're a content therapist. content
therapy.
Yeah.
So
cool.
But there's math anyway.
Yeah.
That's my last thing I'll say.
I could talk for hours.
Do something
on this,
that matters.
But I gotta run. You gotta run. Because I got too much stuff to do than I can possibly do. See, we could spend more time talking if I actually just simplified my life a little bit. So
me too.
Well, excellent.
Me too. I'll check in on that on next week. We'll see how we're doing.
We'll let everybody know how they can find you, because they should if they're interested in anything related to content and professional realm.
So you can find me at repcap.com. That's our business website. You can also find me at managingeditor.com, which is our brand magazine and community for content marketers specifically. And finally, the social network that I am the most active on is in fact LinkedIn. And I am a big fan of that platform and all the different kind of content avenues we can have there. But you can definitely find me over there.
Awesome. As we wind down today's episode, dear listeners, I want to remind you to check out our website, rockethire.com, and learn more about our latest line of business, which is auditing and advising on AI-based hiring tools and talent assessment tools. Take a look at the site. There's a really awesome FAQs document around New York City Local Law 144 that should answer all your questions about that complex and untested piece of legislation. And guess what? There's going to be more to come, so check us out. We're here to help.